The Detroit summer heat hung thick in the tiny apartment on East Jefferson Avenue. 8-year-old Amara Jenkins stood at the stove, stirring mac and cheese in a pot that had seen better days. Behind her, 18-month-old Marcus babbled happily in his playpen, stacking colored blocks only to knock them down with delighted squeals. "Almost done, baby brother," Amara called over her shoulder, her voice carrying the kind of gentle authority that shouldn't belong to a child. Outside, a car backfired. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you." The sound cracked through the evening air like gunfire, and everything changed. Amara spun around to see her mother, Nicole Jenkins, frozen in the doorway. Nicole's eyes had gone somewhere else, somewhere far away. Her hands trembled violently. Her breathing came in rapid, shallow gasps. "Mama?" Amara's voice remained steady, though her heart hammered. She'd seen episodes before, but never like this. "Mama, you're home. You're safe. You're in Detroit." Nicole didn't respond. She sank to the kitchen floor, her back against the cabinet, eyes glazed and distant. Her lips moved soundlessly. Marcus started crying, sensing something wrong. Amara moved fast. She turned off the stove, grabbed her worn notebook from the counter, the one Mama Rose had given her, and knelt beside her mother. "Mama, can you hear me? It's Amara. You're having a flashback. You're safe." Nothing. Nicole's eyes stared through her daughter, seeing something terrible from years ago in Afghanistan. Amara's hand shook as she pulled out her phone. She knew the protocol. Mama Rose had taught her about emergencies, about staying calm, about getting help. She dialed the number she'd hoped never to use. "Mr. Pops, it's Amara. I need you. Now." James Crawford arrived within 3 minutes, his keys still jangling as he burst through the door. The 67-year-old Vietnam veteran took one look at Nicole and understood immediately. "How long?" he asked Amara, kneeling beside them. "5 minutes, maybe 6. She's not responding at all." Pops touched Nicole's shoulder gently. "Nicole, honey, you're home. Come back to us." His voice carried the weight of someone who'd been exactly where Nicole was now. But Nicole's breathing grew worse. She started hyperventilating, her body rigid with terror from memories Amara couldn't see. Pops made the call he would regret for weeks to come. "We need an ambulance, and hurry." The next hours blurred together like a nightmare Amara couldn't wake up from. Paramedics arrived, their radios crackling. Police followed, their presence making everything feel criminal instead of medical. And then came Sandra Mitchell from Child Protective Services, clipboard in hand, observing everything with cold, clinical eyes. Amara tried to explain. She stood in the tiny living room, holding Marcus on her hip, speaking to Sandra Mitchell with careful precision. "My mother has PTSD from her military service. She's been in treatment at the VA hospital for 2 years. This is a medication adjustment period. Her nurse, Gabriela Santos, warned us this might happen. She's not dangerous. She's sick." "And you're 8 years old?" "Yes, ma'am." "Who takes care of you when your mother is like this?" "I take care of Marcus. Mama usually recovers quickly. Mr. Crawford helps us. Deacon Hayes checks on us. We have support." More notes. "The apartment is cluttered." Amara looked around at the small space. Yes, there were toys on the floor, dishes in the sink, laundry in a basket. The everyday mess of people living in poverty, working hard, surviving. "My mama works full-time as a mechanic. I help keep house. We're not dirty, ma'am. We're just tired." But Sandra Mitchell had already decided. Amara could see it in her eyes. The checklist in her head was ticking boxes. Single mother, mental health crisis, young child in caretaker role, cluttered environment, risk factors. At the hospital, they took Nicole away on a 72-hour psychiatric hold. They took Amara and Marcus away too, just in a different direction. "No," Amara's composure finally cracked. "You can't separate us. She needs us. We need her."
"It's temporary," Sandra Mitchell said, not unkindly, "until we ensure the children are safe." "We are safe! We're safe with our mother!" But nobody was listening anymore. By midnight, Amara found herself in a stranger's home. The Robinsons were an older couple, their house clean and quiet and utterly foreign. Mrs. Robinson showed them to a small bedroom with 2 beds. "You must be exhausted, sweetheart," she said gently. Amara held Marcus, who was crying for "Mama, Mama, Mama" in between hiccuping sobs. She sang to him softly, the same lullaby Mama Rose used to sing, until he finally fell asleep in her arms. Only then did Amara allow herself to cry. She cried silently, not wanting to wake Marcus or alert the Robinsons. She cried for her mother, alone in a hospital bed. She cried for Mama Rose, who would have known what to do. She cried for the injustice of it all, her mother serving her country, coming home broken, and now being punished for having an illness she was actively treating. When the tears finally stopped, Amara pulled out her notebook. The worn leather cover was soft from years of Mama Rose's hands. Inside, her grandmother's neat handwriting filled page after page. Legal notes, case summaries, advice about family court. One page had been left for Amara, written in Mama Rose's hand just weeks before cancer took her. "Baby girl, knowledge is the inheritance they can't take from you. If you ever need to fight, you have everything you need right here in your mind. The law is just words, and words are power when you know how to use them. Love, Mama Rose." Amara ran her fingers over the words. In the dim light of the strange bedroom, with Marcus sleeping fitfully beside her, a decision crystallized in her 8-year-old mind. If no one would fight for her family, she would fight herself. She had 7 days until the court hearing. 7 days to do the impossible. She opened the notebook to a fresh page and began to write. The Robinsons' house smelled like lavender and old books. During the day, Amara played the part of a compliant foster child, polite at meals, quiet during the day, attentive to Marcus's needs. But at night, while everyone slept, she became something else entirely. The computer in the Robinsons' home office glowed in the darkness. Amara sat in the leather chair, her feet barely touching the floor, searching through Michigan family law websites with the focused intensity of someone 3 times her age. Michigan court rules, family division, custody proceedings, rights of parents, rights of children, burden of proof, best interest standard. The legal language felt familiar, comfortable even. She'd grown up hearing these words. A memory surfaced, vivid and warm. Amara at age 4, sitting at a small table in Mama Rose's home office, coloring with crayons while her grandmother worked at her desk. "Mama Rose, what's burden of proof?" young Amara had asked, not looking up from her drawing. Her grandmother had smiled. "That means the person saying something bad happened has to prove it. They can't just say it, they have to show evidence. Like when Marcus breaks something and I have to show him he did it? Exactly like that, baby. The law says you're innocent until someone proves you're guilty." Back in the present, adult concepts flowed through Amara's mind as if Mama Rose were still teaching her. She understood that CPS had the burden of proving Nicole was unfit. She understood that one isolated incident shouldn't be enough. She understood that her mother's active treatment and progress should matter. But understanding and proving were different things. Another memory. Amara at age 5, watching Mama Rose prepare for a custody case. "Why do you have different colored folders?" she'd asked. "Organization, baby. Blue for medical records, green for witness statements, yellow for legal precedents, red for financial documents. When you go to court, you need everything perfect. The judge has dozens of cases. You make it easy for them to see the truth." Amara started making notes in her notebook using the same color coding system. She'd need medical evidence of Nicole's treatment, witness testimony about her character and parenting, legal precedent for family preservation, financial documentation showing stability. The task seemed impossible for an 8-year-old. She kept researching. At dawn, she heard footsteps. Quickly, She closed the browser and slipped back to the bedroom where Marcus still slept.
Days blurred together. Mrs. Robinson made breakfast. Amara cared for Marcus. They had a supervised visit with Nicole at the CPS office. 30 minutes of sitting across a table, not allowed to touch, with Sandra Mitchell watching every interaction. Nicole looked broken. The medication they'd given her at the hospital had left her foggy. She couldn't seem to focus. "Baby, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "Don't be sorry, Mama. We're going to fix this." "I don't think we can. They're going to take you away forever." "No." Amara's voice was firm. "They're not. I won't let them." Nicole just cried. On the third night, Amara snuck to the apartment building to get more clothes. The Robinsons had agreed to the trip, thinking she just needed familiar belongings. Instead, Amara grabbed every piece of Nicole's medical paperwork she could find, stuffing folders into her backpack. In the laundry room, she ran into Tyrell Johnson. The 16-year-old lived 3 floors up, had been in and out of foster care since he was 10. He leaned against the washing machine, scrolling through his phone, when Amara entered with her bulging backpack. "Little Amara," he said, surprised. "Heard what happened. That's messed up." "They took us away from our mama." "Yeah, system does that." His voice carried bitter experience. "They took me from mine, too. She wasn't perfect, but she loved me. They didn't care." Amara studied him. "You know how it works, the system." "Know it? I'm a product of it." "Can you help me?" Tyrell raised an eyebrow. "Help you what?" "Fight back." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're 8. And you're 16 and gave up. I won't." Something shifted in Tyrell's expression. He remembered Mama Rose, remembered watching the old paralegal help his mother years ago, before everything fell apart. He'd seen Amara growing up in that apartment, always serious, always reading. "What do you need?" "I need to file legal motions. I need to research case law. I need to learn how to represent my mother in court." Now Tyrell really looked at her. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, little sister. Let's fight this thing." They started that night. Tyrell taught her how to navigate the court's electronic filing system, how to format legal documents, how to find public records. His years bouncing through the system had made him cynical, but it had also made him resourceful. Amara showed him what she'd been researching. Together, they discovered something powerful. Michigan Court Rule 2.117 allowed for next friend representation. A family member could represent another family member in certain civil cases, including custody proceedings. "You really think you can do this?" Tyrell asked. Amara thought about Mama Rose, about everything she'd absorbed sitting in that home office for 3 years, about the hours of watching legal documentaries together, reading case summaries, listening to her grandmother's stories from Legal Aid. "I have to try." Another memory surfaced. Amara, at 6 years old, crying because kids at the youth program had made fun of her for not knowing her father. Mama Rose had held her close. "Baby, some people are born with money. Some are born with privilege. Some are born with 2 parents. But you were born with something they can't take away and can't buy. You were born with a mind that remembers everything it sees and a heart that fights for what's right. That's your inheritance. That's your power." "What if I'm not strong enough?" young Amara had whispered. "Then you'll find the strength, because that's what we do. We survive. We fight. We protect our own." Sitting in the Robinsons' basement at 2 in the morning, Amara opened a new document on the computer. At the top, she typed, Motion for 8-year-old daughter to serve as next friend representative for respondent mother. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, citing statutes and precedents, building legal arguments that would have impressed attorneys twice her age. Tyrell watched in amazement as this tiny girl constructed a document that was technically perfect. "Where'd you learn all this?" "My grandmother. She taught me that words are power. She taught me that the law belongs to everyone, not just lawyers. She taught me to fight." They worked until dawn, perfecting every sentence, checking every citation. When they finished, Amara read through it one final time. "Mama Rose," she whispered to the screen. "I hope I'm doing this right." She hit submit at 6:47 a.m., 4 days before the custody hearing. Somewhere in the Wayne County Family Court building, a clerk would arrive at work to find an unusual motion. A judge would read it with skepticism. Attorneys would laugh. But Amara Jenkins had just fired the opening shot in a battle they didn't see coming. Sharon Williams had worked as a court clerk for 15 years. She'd seen everything: angry parents, desperate lawyers, incompetent filings that made her want to scream. But when she arrived at her desk that Tuesday morning and opened the overnight submissions, she stopped cold. Motion for 8-year-old daughter to serve as next friend representative for respondent mother. Her first instinct was to dismiss it as a prank, probably some law student's idea of a joke. But as she read further, her skepticism faded into something else. The motion was flawless. Every citation correct, every argument properly structured. The writing was clear, precise, and surprisingly sophisticated. It cited Michigan Court Rule 2.117b1, which did indeed allow for next friend representation in certain circumstances. It referenced constitutional protections of family unity. It built a careful legal argument for why an 8-year-old daughter should be allowed to represent her mother in a custody case. Sharon printed the document and walked it directly to Judge Patricia Morrison's chambers. Judge Morrison sat at her mahogany desk, reviewing case files. At 58, she'd spent 25 years presiding over family court. She'd seen it all, or thought she had. "Judge, you need to see this." Sharon handed her the motion. Judge Morrison's eyes narrowed as she read the title. Then she actually laughed, a sharp bark of disbelief. "Is this real?" "Filed electronically this morning. All the information checks out. Nicole Jenkins, respondent in case FC 2024876. Emergency custody hearing scheduled for 4 days from now. And her 8-year-old daughter just filed this motion." Judge Morrison read through it once, then again more slowly. Her amusement faded into something darker. "Who put her up to this? The court-appointed attorney?" "Keith Lambert." "No way. I know Keith. He's barely keeping his head above water with his caseload." "Then who?" Judge Morrison's jaw tightened. This felt like mockery, like someone was making a joke of her courtroom. "Get me Lambert, the prosecutor, and the CPS caseworker on a conference call, now." 30 minutes later, 5 voices crowded the speakerphone. "Explain this to me," Judge Morrison demanded. "Which one of you thought it would be amusing to coach a child to file legal motions?" Crystal Worthington laughed. "Your Honor, I just saw this. It can't be serious." "The motion is technically sound. Someone wrote this." "Not me," Keith Lambert said quickly. He sounded exhausted, defensive. "I met with Miss Jenkins once for 15 minutes. I certainly didn't discuss her daughter representing her." Sandra Mitchell's voice came through clipped and professional. The child demonstrated unusual verbal abilities during our assessment, but this is clearly adult manipulation. Someone is exploiting this situation. What do you want to do, Your Honor? Deny the motion and move forward? Judge Morrison stared at the document. Every instinct told her to dismiss this as a stunt, but something nagged at her. The motion was legally sound, and Michigan law was surprisingly open about next friend representation. I'm scheduling an emergency preliminary hearing tomorrow morning at 9. I want to question this child myself. If she's being coached or exploited, I'll put a stop to it. If this isn't legitimate. She paused, not quite believing she was saying this. Then we'll address the legal issues. Your Honor, Sandra Mitchell protested, this sets a terrible precedent. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., everyone be there. Judge Morrison hung up and stared at the motion. Her mind drifted to her nephew, Elijah. He'd been around Amara's age when Patricia had supported removing him from her sister's custody. Her sister had struggled with addiction, and Patricia had believed removal was protecting him. Elijah was 18 now, living in a group home. His mother had died of an overdose 2 years ago. He'd never forgiven Patricia for taking him away from her. She pushed the thought aside. That situation was different. It had to be. Meanwhile, across town, Amara sat in the CPS waiting room with Mrs. Robinson, waiting for her supervised visit with Nicole. Her phone buzzed. Tyrell had set up alerts for any activity on her case file. Emergency preliminary hearing, scheduled, tomorrow 9 a.m. Judge Morrison wants to question you. Amara's stomach dropped. She'd expected the motion to be reviewed, but not this fast. Not this directly. You okay, honey? Mrs. Robinson asked. Yes, ma'am. Inside the visitation room, Nicole looked worse than before. The medication fog had lifted slightly, but depression had settled in its place. She barely made eye contact when Amara and Marcus entered. Sandra Mitchell stood in the corner, observing as always. Amara sat across the table from her mother. They weren't allowed physical contact, CPS policy. Marcus whimpered, reaching for Nicole but held back by the invisible barrier of rules. Mama, Amara whispered, leaning forward. I need to tell you something. Nicole finally looked up, her eyes hollow. I filed a motion with the court to represent you at the hearing. For a moment, Nicole didn't react. Then understanding slowly dawned. Baby, no, you can't. I already did. The hearing is tomorrow. The judge wants to question me. Amara, this isn't a game. You can't. Everything okay over there? Sandra Mitchell said from her corner. Yes, ma'am. Just talking with my mama. She turned back to Nicole, voice dropping even lower. Mama Rose taught me. All those years watching her work, listening to her cases, reading her notes. I know how to do this. You're 8 years old, and you're my mother, and they took us away from you for having an illness you're treating. That's not right, Mama. That's not justice. Nicole's eyes filled with tears. Baby, you can't fix this. The system doesn't work for people like us. Amara reached across the table, not quite touching, but close enough that Nicole could feel the warmth of her hand. Mama Rose used to say, knowledge is the inheritance they can't take from us. I have her knowledge. I have her notes. I have her voice in my head telling me how to fight. What if it doesn't work? Then at least we tried. But Mama, what if it does? What if we can stay together? Marcus had fallen asleep against Amara's shoulder, exhausted from crying. His little face was puffy, his breathing hitched with leftover sobs. He'd stop calling for Mama during the day. At night in the Robinsons' house, he cried himself to sleep. Nicole saw her son, and something broke inside her, then rebuilt itself, stronger. If this doesn't work, Nicole whispered, if they tell you no, I don't want you to blame yourself. You are my whole heart, baby girl. Both of you are. And nothing that happens is your fault.
I know, Mama.
Promise me. Promise me you won't carry this if it goes wrong."
Amara looked at her mother. This woman who'd served her country, come home broken, worked herself to exhaustion, fought every day against her own mind, and loved her children with a fierceness that burned through all the trauma. "I promise. But it's going to work, Mama. It has to."
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. Tomorrow, Judge Morrison would decide if she even had the right to fight. If the judge said no, it was over. Nicole would face the hearing with Keith Lambert, who'd already given up. The state would present their case. The children would stay in foster care for months, maybe years. She pulled out Mama Rose's notebook and flipped through the pages. Her grandmother's handwriting steadied her. Cases about family preservation, notes about talking to judges, advice about staying calm under pressure. On one page, Mama Rose had written something that must have been for herself. "They'll underestimate you because you're black, because you're a woman, because you didn't go to fancy schools. Let them. Then show them what you're made of." Amara traced the words with her finger. Tomorrow they would underestimate her because she was 8, because she was a child, because the law wasn't supposed to work this way. "Let them," she thought. "Let them underestimate me. Then I'll show them what Mama Rose's granddaughter is made of." She closed the notebook, turned off the light, and forced herself to sleep. Tomorrow would change everything one way or another. In 4 days, if Judge Morrison allowed it, Amara Jenkins would walk into a courtroom and fight for her family. The system had no idea what was coming. Amara threw up twice before leaving the Robinsons' house. Mrs. Robinson held her hair back, making soothing sounds, clearly worried about bringing a sick child to court. "I'm okay," Amara insisted, rinsing her mouth. "Just nervous." "Honey, maybe we should reschedule." "No, it has to be today." The Wayne County Family Court building loomed gray and imposing. Amara wore the blazer Tyrell had found at Goodwill. Navy blue, 2 sizes too big, but professional enough. She carried Mama Rose's worn notebook clutched against her chest like armor. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than she'd imagined from all those legal documentaries. Judge Patricia Morrison sat behind the bench in her black robes, her face stern and unreadable. Crystal Worthington looked polished in a cream-colored suit, smiling slightly as if this were all amusing. Keith Lambert sat hunched over a stack of files, coffee-stained and exhausted. Sandra Mitchell stood near the back, arms crossed, watching everything. And there was Mama. Nicole sat at the defense table in handcuffs, and that was wrong, immediately and viscerally wrong. "Your Honor," Amara said, her voice clear before anyone else could speak, "why is my mother in handcuffs? This is a custody hearing, not a criminal trial." The courtroom went silent. Judge Morrison's eyebrows rose. Crystal Worthington's smile faded. "Young lady," the judge said, "you'll wait to be recognized before—" "With respect, Your Honor, my mother hasn't been charged with any crime. Michigan Court Rule 3.965 doesn't require restraints in child protective proceedings unless the respondent poses an immediate security threat. My mother is a decorated Army veteran suffering from PTSD. She's not violent. She's not dangerous. She shouldn't be shackled like a criminal." Judge Morrison stared at this tiny girl who'd just cited court rules like a seasoned attorney. After a long moment, she nodded to the bailiff. "Remove the restraints." As the handcuffs came off, Nicole's hands shook. She looked at her daughter with a mixture of pride and terror. "Please be seated," Judge Morrison said, her tone different now, more careful. "We're here to address the motion filed by Amara Jenkins to serve as next friend representative for her mother, Nicole Jenkins. Miss Worthington, your objections?" Crystal stood, smoothing her suit. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. Allowing a child to represent anyone in legal proceedings is inappropriate, potentially exploitative, and frankly concerning.
We believe the child is being coached, possibly by someone with an agenda. The psychological impact on the child could be severe. We request the motion be denied and the custody hearing proceed with Mr. Lambert as counsel." "Mr. Lambert," Judge Morrison turned to the exhausted public defender. Keith Lambert stood slowly. He looked at Amara, then at Nicole, then at his mountain of case files. Something in his expression shifted, shame maybe, or awakening conscience. "Your Honor, I was unaware of this motion until yesterday. I did not coach the child. That said, I've reviewed it and it's legally sound. Michigan law does allow next friend representation in certain circumstances. If the child demonstrates competence and understanding, and if Miss Jenkins consents, I don't see grounds to deny it, though I admit I've never seen anything like this in my career."
Ms. Mitchell. Sandra stepped forward. "Your Honor, Child Protective Services objects strongly. This child is already demonstrating inappropriate parentification, assuming adult responsibilities due to her mother's illness. Allowing her to take on legal representation would only reinforce unhealthy patterns and potentially traumatize her further." Judge Morrison turned her gaze to Amara. "Approach the bench." Amara walked forward, her legs steady despite her racing heart. She had to stand on tiptoes to see over the podium properly. "What's your name?" "Amara Rose Jenkins, Your Honor." "How old are you?" 8 years old. I'll be 9 in December." "Who helped you write that motion?" "No one helped me write it. My friend Tyrell Johnson helped me format it and use the electronic filing system, but the words are mine." "Where did you learn to cite case law and court rules?" Amara clutched her notebook. "My grandmother, Rose Jenkins, was a paralegal for legal aid for 35 years. I spent most of my life in her office from when I was 3 until she died 2 years ago. She taught me while I was there. We watched legal documentaries together. She'd read me case summaries instead of bedtime stories. She believed knowledge was the most important inheritance she could give me." Judge Morrison's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "What do you think burden of proof means?" "It means the person making an accusation has to prove it's true. In this case, the state has to prove my mother is unfit. She's presumed fit unless they can prove otherwise with clear and convincing evidence." "What's the standard for custody decisions in Michigan?" "Best interests of the child, Your Honor. But family preservation is preferred when possible. The court should look at the whole situation, not just one incident. My mother's ability to parent, our bond, whether there are less restrictive alternatives to removal." Judge Morrison leaned back. "Why do you want to represent your mother?" Amara's voice trembled slightly, but she pushed forward. "Because Mr. Lambert is a good man, but he has 60 other families depending on him. He spent 15 minutes with my mother. He didn't review her VA medical records. He didn't talk to her treatment providers. He told her maybe she should just accept supervised visitation to make things easier." Keith Lambert flinched, but didn't deny it. "Your Honor, my Mama Rose taught me that justice means making sure people get a fair chance to tell their story. My mommy hasn't had that chance yet. She served 2 tours in Afghanistan. She came home with PTSD that nobody treated properly for years. She's been fighting every single day to get better, to be the mother we need. She goes to therapy, she takes her medication, she works full-time to support us. And one bad night, one episode during a medication adjustment, and they took us away from her." Amara's voice cracked. "We're being punished because she has an illness. That's not right. Mr. Lambert means well, but he has 60 other families. I only have one, and I know this case better than anyone else in this courtroom because I've lived it every single day." The silence that followed was heavy. Judge Morrison studied Amara's face, looking for signs of coaching, of adult manipulation. Instead, she saw genuine pain, fierce love, and intelligence that couldn't be faked. "Do you understand that if I allow this, you'll be cross-examined by Miss Worthington, that you'll have to present evidence, call witnesses, follow legal procedure?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you understand that if I determine at any point that this is harmful to you, I'll stop the proceedings?" "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Morrison was quiet for a long moment. She thought about her nephew Elijah, about the day they'd removed him from his mother, and how he'd screamed and begged, and how Patricia had told herself it was for his own good, how he'd never forgiven her, how his sister died alone, separated from her son. Was she making the same mistake again? Ms. Jenkins, the judge addressed Nicole directly. Do you consent to your daughter representing you? Nicole stood, wiping tears from her face. Your Honor, I don't want this burden on her, but she's right. Nobody else has fought for us. If she wants to try, then yes, I consent.
Judge Mortison took a deep breath. Against my better judgment and with serious reservations, I'm granting the motion with strict conditions. Amara Jenkins may serve as next friend representative for her mother in the custody hearing. However, Mr. Lambert will remain as standby counsel. He will be present at all proceedings. If at any point I determine this is harmful to the child or that proper legal procedure isn't being followed, I will terminate her representation immediately. The custody hearing will proceed as scheduled in 3 days. She gavelled once. Miss Jenkins, Amara, use those 3 days wisely. This is your one chance. Don't waste it. As they filed out of the courtroom, Crystal Worthington approached Amara. Her smile was patronizing. That was very impressive for a child, she said. But the actual hearing will be different. This isn't a game. Amara looked up at her steadily. I know it's not a game, ma'am. It's my family. Outside, Keith Lambert pulled Amara aside. Kid, I'm going to help you. I should have done more for your mother from the start. Tell me what you need. I need you to sign subpoenas for my mother's complete VA medical records, and I need you to review the witness list I'm going to give you. He smiled sadly. You got it. Pops Crawford was waiting by the courthouse steps. Heard you did good in there, little lady. It's not over, Mr. Pops. It's just starting. That evening, back at the Robinsons' house, Amara spread all her materials across the dining room table. She had 3 days to build a case strong enough to reunify her family. 3 days to gather evidence, prepare witnesses, and construct arguments that could overcome the state's presumption that removal was necessary. Mrs. Robinson brought her a sandwich. Honey, you need to eat. I will. I just need to finish this first. You know, Mrs. Robinson said gently, sitting beside her, I taught middle school for 30 years. I've seen a lot of bright kids, but I've never seen anything like you. My grandmother was special. She taught me everything. I can tell. But Amara, even if you do everything right, sometimes the system doesn't work the way it should. I don't want you to blame yourself if... It's going to work, Amara said firmly. It has to. But alone in the borrowed bedroom that night, with Marcus sleeping beside her, Amara allowed herself to feel the weight of what she'd taken on. She was 8 years old. She was going up against prosecutors with law degrees, caseworkers with decades of experience, and a system designed to protect itself more than the families it served. She pulled out Mama Rose's notebook and read by flashlight. Her grandmother's words steadied her. 3 days. She had 3 days to do the impossible. She opened her color-coded folders and got to work. The next morning, Amara awoke with a mission burning in her chest. 3 days to build her case. 3 days to prove her mother was fit, that the system had failed them, and that their family deserved to stay together. She made a list in her notebook, color-coded exactly as Mama Rose had taught her. Blue, medical evidence. Complete VA records showing Nicole's treatment compliance and progress. Green, witness testimony. People who could speak to Nicole's character and parenting. Yellow, legal precedents. Cases supporting family preservation over removal. Red, financial and stability. Proof that Nicole provided a stable home despite poverty. Purple, systemic bias. Evidence of discriminatory patterns in CPS decisions. The hardest part would be finding and preparing witnesses in just 3 days. Amara started with the person she knew would be most reluctant. Pops Crawford sat in his small apartment, hands wrapped around a coffee mug, when Amara knocked that afternoon. Mrs. Robinson had agreed to drive her. Curious about this mysterious neighbor, Amara kept mentioning, "Mr. Pops, I need you to testify." He looked away. "Baby girl, I don't know if I can do that." "Why not?" "Because I called 911. I'm the reason they took you away."
Amara sat beside him. "You called to help my mama, to get her medical care. That's not wrong." "Feels wrong now." "Mr. Pops, you served in Vietnam. You understand PTSD. You know what it's like to fight battles in your own head. The court needs to hear that. They need to understand that having PTSD doesn't make you a bad parent. You can explain that better than anyone." Pops was quiet for a long time. "What if my testimony hurts more than it helps? What if they use my own PTSD against your mama?" "They might try, but the truth is more powerful than their assumptions. You know my mama is a good mother. You've watched her raise us. You've seen how hard she works to manage her illness while still being there for us. Tell the court that truth." He met her eyes finally. "You sound just like your grandmother." "Good. She was usually right." Pop smiled sadly. "All right, little lady. I'll testify. Tell me what you need me to say." "Just the truth, Mr. Pops. That's all I need from anyone." Next came the harder task, tracking down Nicole's VA psychiatric nurse. Amara had found partial medical records in her mother's apartment, enough to get a name and the VA hospital location. But getting through to an actual person was like navigating a maze. She called the VA hospital from the Robinsons' phone, notepad ready. "VA hospital, how may I direct your call?" "I need to speak with Gabriela Santos. She's a psychiatric nurse." "I'll transfer you to psychiatric services." The phone rang, and rang, and rang. Finally, a voicemail. Amara left a message, then called back and left another, and another. On the fourth try, a real person answered. "Psychiatric services, this is Denise." "Hi, ma'am. My name is Amara Jenkins. I need to speak with Nurse Gabriela Santos about my mother, Nicole Jenkins." "I can't give out staff information." "I understand, but my mother is her patient, and there's a custody hearing in 3 days. I need Nurse Santos to testify about my mother's treatment." "Honey, you sound like a child. Is there an adult I can speak with?" "Ma'am, I'm 8 years old, and I'm representing my mother in family court because they took me and my brother away from her after a PTSD episode. Nurse Santos knows my mother has been compliant with treatment for 2 years. She knows the episode was related to medication adjustment. The court needs to hear that from someone with medical expertise. Please, I just need you to give her my message." There was a long pause. "Give me your number. I'll see if I can reach her." 2 hours later, Amara's phone rang. "Is this Amara?" The voice was warm, professional, slightly accented. "Yes, ma'am. Are you Nurse Santos?" "I am. Denise told me about your call. I've been trying to reach your mother for weeks. When she missed her last appointment, I was worried. Nobody told me CPS had taken her children. They took us because of the episode, the one you warned us might happen during the medication adjustment." Gabriela swore softly in Spanish. "They didn't consult her treatment team? They didn't call the VA? They just removed you?" "Yes, ma'am." "That's exactly what I was afraid of. The system doesn't understand PTSD. They see an episode and assume danger instead of recognizing a treatable medical event." She paused. "You said you're representing your mother?" "Yes, ma'am. The hearing is in 3 days." "You're 8 years old?" "Yes, ma'am. My grandmother taught me." Another pause. Your mother talks about you all the time, about how smart you are, how you help her track her triggers and medication. I thought maybe she was exaggerating because proud mama. She wasn't exaggerating. Will you testify? I need you to explain to the judge that my mother has been actively treating her PTSD, that she's made progress, that one episode during medication adjustment doesn't mean she's unfit.
I'll do better than testify. I'm bringing every record I have. They want to question your mother's fitness? I'll show them 2 years of perfect appointment attendance, medication compliance, and steady progress. I'll show them the 3-month wait list she was on for intensive outpatient therapy because the VA is underfunded. They failed her, not the other way around. Amara felt tears of relief. Thank you, Nurse Santos. Call me Gabi. And Amara, you're going to win this. How do you know? Because I've seen a lot of families destroyed by this system, but I've never seen a family fight back like yours is about to. That evening, Deacon Hayes appeared at the Robinsons' door. The 70-year-old pastor had heard about the case through Pops Crawford. Sister Robinson, he said formally, I've come to offer my testimony on behalf of the Jenkins family. Mrs. Robinson, surprised, invited him in. Amara looked up from her papers, startled. Deacon Hayes, you don't have to. Child, I baptized your mother when she was 12 years old. I presided over your grandmother's funeral. I've watched you grow up in my church. You think I'm going to let that courtroom hear lies about your family without speaking up? He sat down at the table, reviewing Amara's organized files with approval. Your grandmother would be proud of this work. Very thorough. Thank you, sir. But what can you testify about? We haven't been to church much since Mama Rose died. I can testify about your mother's character, about the community ready to support your family, about the support systems CPS never bothered to ask about. He pulled out a folded paper. I made some calls today. 23 families from our congregation have signed up to help. Childcare, meal preparation, transportation to appointments, counseling through our church's mental health ministry, financial assistance if needed. 23 families? Your grandmother helped half of them through legal aid over the years. They're ready to return the favor. That caseworker claimed your mother was isolated? I'll show the court exactly how wrong she was. Meanwhile, Tyrell worked his own angle. He'd been documenting the case carefully on social media, not violating any court orders, but spreading awareness. A local news station had picked up the story. The headline read, 8-year-old fights CPS to keep family together. This is getting attention, Tyrell told Amara that night. People are angry about what happened to your family. Will that help or hurt in court? Could go either way, but at least people are paying attention. The system hates sunlight. By the second day, Amara had a setback. Sandra Mitchell filed supplemental reports and Keith Lambert brought copies to Amara. The reports were damning. Sandra described the cluttered apartment in detail, painting it as neglectful rather than poor. She emphasized how Amara had assumed inappropriate parental responsibilities, arguing this proved the home environment was unhealthy. She included psychological assessments suggesting Nicole's condition was likely to deteriorate further. She's making us sound terrible, Amara said, voice shaking as she read. Keith Lambert sat across from her. She believes she's protecting you. In her mind, removing children from unstable situations is always the safer choice. She's seen real abuse, real neglect. It's made her unable to distinguish between families that need support and families that need separation. How do I fight this? You show the court the difference between poverty and neglect, between a child who's resilient and a child who's parentified, between a treatable illness and unfitness. He paused. and you show them the bias in Sandra's assessment. She saw a black, single mother with mental illness and checked all her boxes without looking deeper. That word, bias, sparked something in Amara's mind. She'd seen statistics during her research about racial disparities in child welfare. That night, she and Tyrell dug deeper. Using public records requests Tyrell knew how to file, they uncovered something explosive. In Wayne County, over the past year, emergency custody orders were filed in 37 cases involving veterans with PTSD. Of those, 23 involved black families and 14 involved white families. But the outcomes were stark. Of the white families, 11 received in-home support services without removal. Only 3 had children removed, and those involved documented abuse beyond the mental health episodes.
Of the black families, 19 had children removed immediately. Only 4 received in-home services first. "This is it," Tyrell said. "This is systemic discrimination, right here in the numbers." Amara stared at the data. Her mother wasn't just another case. She was part of a pattern. Black veteran families were being torn apart, while white families with similar issues received support. "I need to present this in court." "Will the judge allow it?" "She has to. How can she rule on our case without understanding the context, without seeing that my mother was treated differently because of her race?" By the third day, Amara had assembled her case. Medical records from the VA showing Nicole's treatment compliance, witness statements from Pops Crawford, Deacon Hayes, and Gabriela Santos, financial records proving Nicole maintained steady employment, letters from neighbors and community members, legal precedents supporting family preservation, and the statistical analysis showing racial disparities in emergency custody decisions. She organized everything in color-coded binders exactly as Mama Rose had taught her: blue for medical, green for witnesses, yellow for legal precedents, red for financial stability, purple for systemic evidence. Keith Lambert reviewed her work that final evening and shook his head in amazement. "This is better organized than cases I've seen from attorneys with 20 years of experience." "Is it enough?" "I don't know, Amara. Crystal Worthington is good at her job. She'll present the state's case effectively. The judge is skeptical by nature, and you're 8 years old, arguing against trained professionals." He met her eyes. "But you've given your mother the best shot anyone could. Your grandmother would be incredibly proud." That night, Amara video called Nicole from the Robinsons' house. The supervised call lasted only 10 minutes. "Tomorrow, Mama. Tomorrow we tell them the truth." Nicole's eyes were red from crying, but she smiled. "Baby, whatever happens, you've already done more than I ever dreamed possible. You've fought for us. You've loved us. That's enough. It's not enough until we're together again. I love you, Amara Rose." "I love you too, Mama. See you in court." After the call ended, Amara sat with her binders, reviewing everything one final time. Marcus slept peacefully beside her, finally adjusted enough to the Robinsons' house that he wasn't crying every night. But he should be sleeping in his own bed, in his own home, with his mother down the hall. Tomorrow, Amara would fight to make that happen. She opened Mama Rose's notebook to the last page her grandmother had written. "Remember, baby girl, the courtroom is where words become power, where truth stands against assumption, where one person standing in the right can move mountains. You have the words, you have the truth. Now go move those mountains." Amara closed the notebook, turned off the light, and prepared for the biggest fight of her young life. The courtroom was packed. Amara hadn't expected that. Community members filled the gallery. People from Deacon Hayes' church, neighbors from the apartment building, even some of Tyrell's foster youth advocacy group. The local news had sent a camera crew, approved by Judge Morrison for limited recording. Word had spread about the 8-year-old representing her mother, and people wanted to witness it. Crystal Worthington looked irritated by the crowd. She preferred clean, quiet proceedings where she could methodically present her case without emotional interference. This felt like a circus. Amara sat at the defense table beside her mother. Nicole wore a borrowed professional outfit from one of the church ladies, a navy dress that almost fit, shoes that pinched but looked presentable. She kept glancing at Amara with a mixture of pride and terror. Marcus was with Mrs. Robinson in the hall.
too young for the courtroom, but close enough that Nicole had seen him briefly before proceedings began. He'd reached for her, crying "Mama," and Sandra Mitchell had pulled him back, citing protocol. Keith Lambert sat behind them as standby counsel, ready to step in if needed. Judge Morrison entered, and everyone rose. She surveyed the packed courtroom with raised eyebrows but said nothing. Her gavel came down. "We're here for the custody hearing in the matter of Jenkins' children. The state has filed for continued temporary custody pending completion of a treatment program by the respondent mother, Nicole Jenkins. Miss Worthington, you may present your case."
Crystal stood, smoothing her cream suit. She'd prepared for this to be straightforward. Present the facts of the incident, emphasize child safety, recommend supervised visitation until the mother completed an extended treatment program, 6 to 12 months of separation, then gradual reunification if the mother proved stable. She'd done this dozens of times. The judge typically agreed. "Your Honor, on the evening of August 15th, emergency services responded to a call at the Jenkins residence. What they found was a mother in severe psychiatric distress, unresponsive and unable to care for her children. An 8-year-old child had assumed full parental responsibility, including caring for an 18-month-old infant. The apartment was in disarray. The situation posed clear and present danger to the children's welfare." She clicked to a presentation on the courtroom screen. Photos of Nicole at the hospital, eyes glazed. Photos of the apartment, toys scattered, dishes in the sink, laundry on the couch. Photos that made poverty look like neglect. "The respondent has a documented history of PTSD with violent combat trauma. While we respect her military service, we must prioritize child safety. The pattern of parentification, forcing the 8-year-old into a caretaker role, constitutes emotional neglect. CPS assessment determined the children were at risk and removal was necessary." Crystal called her first witness. Sandra Mitchell took the stand, professionally dressed, every inch the competent caseworker. "Ms. Mitchell, please describe what you observed at the Jenkins residence." Sandra recited her assessment clinically. The cluttered apartment, Nicole's unresponsive state, Amara's overly adult demeanor, the way the child tried to explain and justify her mother's condition instead of showing appropriate fear or concern. "In your professional opinion, were the children in danger?" "Yes. The mother was unable to provide care. The 8-year-old was attempting to fulfill parental duties beyond her capacity. The infant was crying and needed attention. The situation was unstable and unsafe." "What did you recommend?" "Immediate removal pending evaluation. Standard protocol in cases involving severe mental health episodes where the parent cannot ensure child safety." "Thank you. No further questions." Judge Morrison turned to Amara. "Cross-examination?" Amara stood. She had to adjust the podium microphone down to her height. Behind her, she heard someone in the gallery whisper, "She's so tiny." "Ms. Mitchell," Amara began, her voice clear, "how many years have you worked for Child Protective Services?" 20 years. In those 20 years, how many cases have you handled involving veterans with PTSD? Sandra hesitated. "I don't have an exact number." "More than 10? "Yes." "More than 50? "Probably." "In any of those cases, did you consult with the veterans' treatment providers before filing for emergency custody?" Sandra shifted. "If there's immediate danger, we act first and gather information later. That's protocol." "But my mother had been treating her PTSD at the VA hospital for 2 years. Her treatment team knew about the medication adjustment. They knew an episode was possible.
Wouldn't calling them have provided context about whether this was a dangerous situation or a temporary medical event? We have to make decisions based on what we observe in the moment. What you observed was my mother having a treatable medical condition. Did you check whether she had a history of violence toward her children? No documented history. Did you check whether her children showed signs of neglect? The 8-year-old you were displaying parentification behaviors. What exactly did you observe me doing that concerned you? Sandra consulted her notes. You were explaining your mother's condition, you knew her medication schedule, you were attempting to care for your infant brother. These are adult responsibilities.
Ms. Mitchell, if I didn't know my mother's medication schedule, would that be better or worse? I'm not sure I understand the question. You said it concerned you that I knew about my mother's PTSD and medication. But isn't it better that I understood her condition and could help her manage it? Isn't that just a child being informed about their parents' health? Like kids with diabetic parents who know about insulin. Sandra frowned. It's different when the illness is mental health related, Amara pressed gently. Ms. Mitchell, do you have specialized training in PTSD or military trauma? I have general mental health training. Have you ever served in the military? No. Do you know what a combat flashback is? Broadly, yes. Have you ever experienced one? Of course not. Then how did you determine my mother was dangerous rather than suffering from a temporary episode of a chronic but manageable condition? The courtroom was silent. Crystal Worthington frowned, preparing to object. But Sandra answered first. Based on my 20 years of experience and the risk assessment protocols we follow. Protocols? Amara repeated. What do those protocols say about considering community support systems? We evaluate the family's resources. Did you ask whether we had community support? I observed the situation on that night. That's not an answer, ma'am. Did you ask whether our church, our neighbors, or our community could help support my mother during her recovery? Did you even know that 23 families had volunteered to help us before you filed to keep us separated? Sandra's jaw tightened. No one informed me of that. Because you didn't ask. Amara's voice stayed respectful but firm. You saw a black single mother with mental illness and made assumptions instead of investigating. Isn't that true? Objection, Crystal stood. Argumentative and assumes facts, not an evidence. Sustained, Judge Morrison said, but she was watching Amara with intense focus. No further questions, Amara said quietly. She returned to her seat. Nicole squeezed her hand under the table. Keith Lambert leaned forward and whispered, "That was excellent." Crystal called 2 more witnesses, the responding police officer and a CPS supervisor who backed up Sandra's assessment. Each time their testimony was professional, clinical, and painted Nicole as unstable and the children at risk. Then it was the defense's turn. Amara stood. Your Honor, I'd like to make my opening statement. Judge Morrison nodded. Proceed. Amara walked to the podium again. She opened Mama Rosa's notebook, not to read from it, but to draw strength from its presence. Then she looked directly at Judge Morrison. Your Honor, I'm 8 years old. I shouldn't be standing here, but neither should my mother be facing losing us. She paused, letting that sink in. On August 15th, my mother had a PTSD episode during a medication adjustment period. It was scary. It was hard, but it wasn't criminal and it wasn't evidence of unfitness. It was a medical event, a predictable complication of treating a service-connected disability. Amara gestured to her organized binders. I'm going to show you my mother's complete medical records from the VA. 2 years of perfect appointment attendance, consistent medication compliance, steady progress in managing her PTSD. I'm going to show you a community ready to support us, church members, neighbors, treatment providers who believe in my mother's recovery. I'm going to show you that what CPS called a cluttered apartment was actually just poverty. What they called parentification was actually just a daughter who loves her mother and understands her illness. Her voice grew stronger. Your Honor,
But I'm going to ask you a question the state hasn't asked. Is my mother unfit, or did the system fail to see her clearly? Did CPS
investigate and determine removal was necessary, or did they react based on assumptions about mental illness, about poverty, about black families? She met the judge's eyes. The state wants to separate us for months while my mother proves what she's already been proving for 2 years, that she's committed to her recovery and her children. But every day we're apart, my baby brother cries for our mama. Every supervised visit behind glass breaks us a little more. The state's solution is causing more harm than the problem they claim to be fixing. Amara closed the notebook. Your Honor, I'm asking you to trust in healing over fear, to choose family preservation over convenient separation, to see my mother as a whole person, not just a diagnosis. Thank you. She sat down to absolute silence. Then, softly at first, but growing, applause from the gallery. Judge Morrison didn't stop it immediately, letting it swell for just a moment before gaveling for order. Your first witness, Miss Jenkins? The defense calls James Crawford. Pops walked to the stand, his bearing military straight despite his age. He was sworn in and sat down, meeting Amara's eyes with steady confidence. Mr. Crawford, how do you know my mother? I've been your neighbor for 5 years, since before your brother was born. What's your background? Served in the United States Army during Vietnam, saw combat, came home in 1971, worked for the Postal Service for 35 years after that. Been living in the same apartment building ever since I retired. Do you have PTSD, Mr. Pops? Crystal half rose to object to the informal address, but decided against it. Pops smiled slightly. Yes, I do. Struggled with it for decades before I got help through the VA. Can you describe what a PTSD episode looks like? Pops leaned forward, speaking directly to Judge Morrison. Your Honor, it's like your mind takes you back to the worst moment of your life. You're not in the present anymore. You're back in that moment, reliving it. Your body reacts like the danger is real and happening right now. Your heart races, you can't breathe. Sometimes you can't move. Sometimes you lash out at threats that aren't there. It's terrifying, but it's not a choice. It's your brain trying to protect you from danger that's already passed. On August 15th, you came to our apartment. What did you see? I saw Nicole having the kind of episode I've had myself more times than I can count. She was locked in a flashback, unresponsive to the outside world. I knew she needed medical help to come out of it safely. Why did you call 911? Because I was worried about her, not about the kids. They were safe. Amara had everything under control. But Nicole's breathing was getting worse, and I thought she might hurt herself without meaning to. I called for help, not to report her as dangerous. Did you ever see my mother be violent or abusive toward me or my brother? Never. Not once in 5 years. Nicole is one of the most loving mothers I've ever seen. She works herself to the bone for you kids. She goes to every appointment, takes her medication, fights every single day to manage her condition. That one night doesn't change 2 years of watching her be an excellent parent. In your experience with PTSD, is it possible to manage the condition and still be a good parent? Absolutely. PTSD doesn't make you unfit. It makes you human. It means you survived something terrible and your brain is still processing it. With treatment and support, you can live a full life. You can work, you can love, you can raise children. It's not easy, but it's possible. Thank you, Mr. Pops. No further questions. Crystal Worthington approached for cross-examination. Mr. Crawford, you said you've struggled with PTSD for decades. Have you ever had custody of children during your episodes? No, ma'am. Never. Never married, never had kids. So you can't actually speak to the safety of children during a PTSD episode, can you? I can speak to the difference between a medical crisis and a dangerous person. Nicole wasn't a threat to those kids. She was sick and needed help. But you're not a medical professional, are you? No, ma'am. Just a veteran who's lived with this condition for 50 years.
No further questions. Amara called Deacon Hayes next. The 70-year-old pastor took the stand with quiet dignity, his presence commanding respect. Deacon Hayes, how long have you known the Jenkins family? I baptized Nicole when she was 12 years old. Knew her mother, your grandmother Rose, for 40 years. Presided over Rose's funeral 2 years ago. I've watched you grow up, child. You came to our youth programs before your mother started homeschooling you. Can you speak to my mother's character? Nicole Jenkins is a woman of integrity. She served her country with honor. She came home carrying wounds we can't see, but she never stopped fighting. She works hard. She loves her children fiercely. When Rose died, Nicole struggled, but she kept showing up, kept trying. That takes strength most people don't have. Deacon, CPS reported that my mother is isolated, without support systems. Is that true? No, it is not. Deacon pulled out his list. I made some calls after hearing about this case. 23 families from our congregation signed up to help. We've got childcare covered 7 days a week, meal preparation, transportation to appointments. Our church has a mental health ministry that provides free counseling. We have a benevolence fund for financial assistance if needed. He looked directly at Sandra Mitchell. That caseworker never asked if we existed. She assumed Nicole was alone. She was wrong. This family has a whole community ready to support them. Why didn't the church help more before the incident? Because Nicole is proud, like her mother was. She doesn't ask for help easily. But when Rose was alive, they had each other. After Rose died, Nicole isolated herself some, focusing on work and raising you kids. But the moment we heard what happened, the community mobilized. We were ready to step in. Nobody asked us to. Amara felt tears threatening, but pushed them back. Thank you, Deacon. No further questions. Crystal's cross-examination was brief. Mr. Hayes, where was all this community support when Miss Jenkins was having her breakdown? She hadn't asked for it yet, but it was always available. Isn't it convenient that all this support materialized only after the children were removed? It isn't convenient, ma'am. It's heartbreaking. If CPS had called me on August 15th, I could have told them all this then, but they didn't ask. They just took the children away. The final witness of the day was Gabriela Santos. The VA psychiatric nurse entered carrying a thick folder of medical records. She was sworn in and stated her credentials: registered nurse, specialty in psychiatric care, 6 years at the VA hospital. Nurse Santos, how do you know my mother? Nicole Jenkins has been my patient for approximately 2 years. I provide psychiatric nursing care, monitor her medication, coordinate her therapy, and track her progress in managing her PTSD. Can you describe her treatment compliance? Gabby opened her folder. Nicole has attended every scheduled appointment in 2 years. That's 26. Perfect attendance. She takes her medication as prescribed. I monitor this through regular check-ins and blood work. She participates actively in therapy. She follows all treatment recommendations. In my 6 years at the VA, I've rarely seen a patient more committed to their recovery. Tell the court about the medication adjustment. In July, Nicole's psychiatrist changed her medication regimen. We were switching from one SSRI to another because she'd plateaued in her progress. Medication changes carry risks, including increased anxiety and potential breakthrough symptoms. I warned Nicole this might happen. We scheduled extra check-ins to monitor her, but the VA has limited resources. Even with close monitoring, there's a window where patients are vulnerable to episodes. Did you know about the August 15th incident? Not immediately. When Nicole missed her next appointment, I tried calling repeatedly. I was worried. I finally reached her 3 days later and learned CPS had removed her children. No one from CPS contacted me. No one asked for her medical records or treatment history. They made decisions about her fitness without consulting her treatment team.
Amara passed Gabby a document. What is this? Nicole's treatment plan and progress notes. They show steady improvement in managing triggers, reducing episode frequency, and developing coping mechanisms. The August 15th episode was an isolated incident related to medication adjustment, not evidence of treatment failure or deteriorating condition. In your professional opinion, does having PTSD make someone unfit to parent?
Absolutely not. PTSD is a treatable condition. With proper care and support, people with PTSD can and do raise children successfully. The key is treatment compliance and support systems, both of which Nicole has. One final question. What is the typical wait time for intensive outpatient therapy at the VA? Gabby's expression darkened. Currently, about 3 months. Nicole was on that wait list. She'd been waiting 11 weeks when this happened. If she'd had access to that higher level of care sooner, the August episode might never have occurred. So the system failed her. Yes, the VA is chronically underfunded. Veterans wait months for care they need immediately. And then when the inevitable crisis happens, they're punished for the system's failure to serve them. Crystal Worthington stood for cross-examination, her expression harder now. Nurse Santos, you said the episode was related to medication adjustment, but couldn't it happen again? Any medication change carries similar risks, so Ms. Jenkins could have another episode? It's possible, though less likely now that she's stable on the new medication. But possibility isn't certainty. We manage risk in mental health care. We don't eliminate it entirely. And during an episode, could she pose a danger to her children? During that specific episode, she posed no danger. She was unresponsive, not violent. Different presentations of PTSD carry different risk profiles. But you can't guarantee another episode won't be more severe. Gabby met Crystal's eyes steadily. I can't guarantee anything in medicine, ma'am, but I can tell you that the trauma of family separation causes documented, measurable harm to children. The risk of that harm is certain and immediate. The risk of another PTSD episode is theoretical and manageable with proper support. She leaned forward slightly. Which risk would you choose, counselor? The definite trauma of taking children from their mother, or the managed risk of a treatable medical condition? Judge Morrison intervened. That's enough. The witness is excused. As Gabby stepped down, she caught Amara's eye and nodded slightly. You did good, the look said. Court adjourned for the day. Tomorrow would bring Nicole's testimony and Amara's final arguments. Outside, the crowd from the gallery surrounded them. Church members hugged Nicole. Neighbors offered encouragement. Tyrell captured everything on his phone, documenting the community support that CPS had claimed didn't exist. You're doing amazing, Pops told Amara. Rose would be so proud. But Amara felt the weight of what still lay ahead. Tomorrow, her mother would have to testify, would have to be vulnerable in front of strangers who'd already decided she was unfit, would have to relive her trauma for people who might not care. And then Amara would have to present the evidence that scared her most, the statistics showing racial bias in the system, the proof that her family wasn't just unlucky, but targeted. That night, she barely slept. Tomorrow would determine everything. The second day began with Nicole taking the stand. Her hands trembled as she was sworn in. Amara watched her mother closely, seeing the fear, but also something else. Determination. Mama, tell the court about your military service. Nicole's voice started soft, but grew steadier. I enlisted in the Army at 18, needed to escape poverty, needed purpose. Served 2 tours in Afghanistan as a vehicle mechanic. Saw combat. Lost my best friend when her convoy hit an IED. Her voice caught. Came home at 26 with PTSD, nobody diagnosed for 3 years. Why did it take so long to get treatment? Didn't know what was wrong with me. thought I was just broken. Finally, Mama Rose, your grandmother, made me go to the VA. That's when I got diagnosed and started therapy. Tell the court about August 15th. Nicole closed her eyes briefly. A car backfired outside. The sound took me right back to Afghanistan. I was in a firefight again. Couldn't see my apartment, couldn't see my babies, just saw smoke and blood and my friend dying. I knew Amara was there somewhere, could hear her voice, but I couldn't reach her. It was terrifying. Were you trying to hurt anyone? God, no. I was just trapped in my own head, reliving the worst day of my life. Mama, why didn't you just give up?
Nicole's eyes filled with tears. Because you and Marcus are my reason for living. Every therapy session, every medication, every hard day, I do it for you. You're why I keep fighting. Amara stepped back. Your witness, Miss Worthington. Crystal approached like a predator. Miss Jenkins, how many episodes have you had in the past year? Small ones, maybe once a month, but nothing like August 15th. So your condition isn't stable. It's being managed. There's a difference. Can you guarantee you won't have another severe episode? Nicole met her eyes. No, I can't guarantee that. But I can guarantee I'm fighting every day to be the mother my children deserve. Is that enough? Yes, Nicole said firmly, because love and effort matter. Because I'm not perfect, but I'm their mother and I'm trying. That has to count for something. After Nicole stepped down, Amara stood. Your Honor, I have one more piece of evidence. She approached with the statistical analysis she and Tyrell had compiled. This shows emergency custody decisions in Wayne County over the past year involving veterans with PTSD. Crystal objected immediately. Relevance, Your Honor. Systemic context is relevant, Judge Morrison said. I'll allow it. Amara presented the data clearly. This shows Black veteran families are 3.2 times more likely to have children removed than white families with similar mental health episodes. Here are 3 specific cases from this year where white mothers with PTSD received in-home services instead of removal, despite comparable or worse episodes than my mother's. The courtroom went silent. Sandra Mitchell shifted uncomfortably. Your Honor, my mother wasn't just unlucky. She was treated differently because she's Black. The system saw a Black single mother with mental illness and made assumptions. They didn't investigate. They just removed us. Judge Morrison studied the documents, her expression unreadable. Court is adjourned until tomorrow morning for closing arguments. The final morning arrived with even more people packed into the gallery. Crystal Worthington stood first for her closing argument. Your Honor, the state acknowledges Ms. Jenkins' love for her children and her military service. But love isn't enough when safety is at risk. This case involved real danger, an unresponsive mother, a child bearing adult responsibilities, uncertainty about future episodes. We recommend reunification after Ms. Jenkins completes a 6-month structured treatment program with supervised visitation until then. Then Amara stood. At 8 years old, she barely reached the podium, but her voice carried through the courtroom. Your Honor, the state's case rests on fear, not facts. They fear my mother's PTSD without understanding it. They fear poverty, calling our cluttered apartment neglect. They fear my competence, calling it parentification instead of resilience. She paused. But fear is a terrible basis for justice. She gestured to her binders. The evidence shows my mother has been treating her PTSD consistently for 2 years. The episode was a predictable medication complication, not proof of unfitness. Our community is ready to support us. The only thing keeping us apart is the state's assumption that separation is safer than support. Her voice grew stronger. Marcus cries every night for our mama. I watch her through glass during supervised visits. We're being punished because she has an illness. That's not justice, Your Honor. That's cruelty disguised as protection. Amara pulled out Mama Rose's notebook, opening to a page near the end.
My grandmother wrote, "The law should serve love, not fear." Your Honor, you have the power to reunify us today with appropriate support services, or you can separate us for months while my mother proves what she's already proven. One choice trusts in healing, the other assumes the worst. I'm asking you to choose trust. She sat down to absolute silence. Judge Morrison took a recess. 45 agonizing minutes passed before she returned. In 25 years on this bench, I have rarely been as challenged as I have by this case. This young lady has forced me to examine not just the facts before me, but my own assumptions about families, mental health, and justice. She looked directly at Amara. I initially dismissed your motion as a stunt. I was wrong. You've demonstrated more competence, more passion, and more understanding of justice than many attorneys I've seen. Then she turned to the evidence. The court finds that while CPS had reasonable cause for emergency intervention, continued separation is not in the children's best interests. Ms. Jenkins
is actively treating her PTSD. She has community support. The statistical evidence of racial disparities is troubling and cannot be ignored. Nicole began crying silently. Therefore, the court orders immediate reunification with conditions, continued VA treatment, weekly check-ins with a different social worker, home-based family support services, and a 30-day review hearing. Additionally, I'm directing CPS to conduct a comprehensive review of emergency custody decisions in veteran families, specifically examining racial disparities. The gavel came down. The Jenkins children are returned to their mother's custody, effective immediately. The courtroom erupted. Nicole collapsed in tears as Amara ran to her. They embraced for the first time in weeks without barriers. Mrs. Robinson brought Marcus in, and the toddler screamed, "Mama! Mama!" and launched himself into Nicole's arms. The family held each other as the gallery celebrated around them. 2 months later, the Jenkins apartment felt like home again. Nicole had progressed in her intensive therapy program. Amara had returned to homeschooling but now attended a youth advocacy group Tyrell created. The CPS review Judge Morrison ordered revealed disturbing patterns, leading to policy changes across Wayne County. Cultural competency training became mandatory. Treatment providers had to be consulted before removals in mental health cases. Amara's case had gone viral. News outlets covered it nationally. Donald Rivera, a senior attorney, helped her file a federal civil rights complaint about systemic discrimination in child welfare. At the 30-day review hearing, Judge Morrison officially closed the case. Ms. Jenkins, you and your family have made remarkable progress. This case has changed how I see justice. Thank you for that. The final scene found Amara at Mama Rose's grave with Nicole and Marcus. She placed flowers on the headstone. "We did it, Mama Rose. We used the knowledge you gave me." Back home, Amara opened a new notebook labeled Families Who Need Help. Several names were already written inside, other families reaching out after hearing her story. Nicole looked over her shoulder. "Are you sure you want to do this again?" Amara smiled, thinking of Mama Rose's words. "Knowledge is the inheritance they can't take from us. I have to share it." She sat at her desk, Mama Rose's picture on the wall above her, and began reviewing a new case while Nicole played with Marcus in the background. A family healed and a young advocate just beginning her journey. 6 months after the verdict, Amara Jenkins sat in a university auditorium filled with law students. At 9 years old, she was their guest speaker. "People ask me if I was scared," she said into the microphone, "every single day. But Mama Rose taught me that fear doesn't mean you stop fighting. It means you fight anyway." The students erupted in applause. Afterwards, 3 families approached her with stories eerily similar to her own: veterans, PTSD, children removed without proper investigation. Amara took their information carefully.
Keith Lambert had agreed to supervise her advocacy work, ensuring she didn't take on more than a child should carry. Donald Rivera's firm provided pro bono support for families she identified. At home, Nicole watched her daughter with pride and concern. "You're still allowed to just be a kid, you know." "I am a kid, just one who happens to know some law." Marcus toddled over, now talking in full sentences. "Read story, Mara?" I scooped him up. "Always, baby brother." That night, reviewing case files at her small desk, Amara heard Mama Rose's voice in her memory. "You were born for this." Maybe she was. Or maybe the world just needed people willing to fight. Either way, she was ready.